Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today on the Skincarma Pod, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Mark Menning. Dr. Menning is a pharmaceutical scientist and the visionary founder and CEO of Mark Los Angeles, a breakthrough new skincare brand with an innovative approach to ingredient delivery straight from the world of medicine. With a PhD in chemical engineering and a legacy in pharmaceutical innovation, including the development of FDA approved antiviral drugs, Dr. Menning is bringing scientific rigor to plant powered skincare products. Through his unique XDF delivery system, he's redefining how plant flavonoids penetrate the skin to enhance efficacy with clean, clinical solutions for inflammation, acne, and even cold sores. I love talking to founders in the skincare space, and especially innovative founders who are bringing things to market that have never been done before. I'm so excited to walk out with him. Let's do this. Let's talk to Dr. Mark Menning. Dr. Menning, hi.
Hey, Carmine. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm really honored. We had like a kind of prelim session, and I got super excited. I've been familiar with your brand for a while now, and it's just really great to have you here. And like I said, you have an approach to this business that I've never known anybody to have. So, your perspective is super cool to me. And I just really want to, like I said, I want to wonk out. Do you mind if I call you Mark?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Mark, like let's just hop right in. Like, tell us who you are, where you're from, how you got started, and good Lord, how you got into pharmaceutical science.
Oh, again, yeah, thanks. I'm really happy to talk to you. And yeah, I grew up in Ohio, Midwest, and went to school in Ohio at the Ohio State University. So I have undergraduate chemical engineering, PhD in chemical engineering as well, and I got that from University College Dublin. Really focusing on like the how particles behave in drug products, and specifically like tablets and capsules. And that's important because we need to understand how they kind of deaggregate and dissolve in the gut. And
Mm.
so that's where I focused that energy in my post graduate work. And so I moved. I knew growing up in Ohio, I love Ohio. I love being from Ohio, but I knew to sort of expand my universe, I needed to go either coast. So in my 20s, I moved to Philadelphia and worked at DuPont Pharmaceuticals. And it was really interesting. That's where I first kind of brushed up against sativa, and that'll kind of play an important role in the later part of my career. But, we were working on some very potent anticoagulants in my team. But then, we would help out every once in a while for this really amazing, drug called Sativa. And even back then, they were partnering with Gilead, which again comes up later in my story. So it was kind of cool to see this arc of a commonality in my career. But then, I got recruited to come out to California. And so again, looking for a change, I moved out to Southern California and I worked at Amgen. And it was primarily a biotech company, but we had a fledgling small molecule group. And that's the area I focus on are, some oral small molecules. So again, tablets and capsules. And for some reason that just didn't fit. I'm going from the East Coast, moving to new West Coast experience in my 20s, trying to make sense of who I am as a person.
Mm.
And then I don't know, the timing was amazing because I got a phone call from who would become my boss and said, "Hey, you need to get out of there and come up and join Gilead in the Bay Area." And I was like, I have no idea who this company is. I like this guy. We seem to connect. And so I kind of packed things up and moved up to the Bay Area, and I loved it up there. I mean, it was just kind of a different. it's one of those things where the timing just sort of fits. You know, it's a
Yeah.
small company. Gilead wasn't even profitable back then. It was only a couple hundred employees. And I came in to work on Truvada, and that
Mm.
was the first drug. And so I literally, like the first day, I collect all my stuff, and then the next day I'm off. You know, we do some formulation development work, and then I'm off scaling this thing up to like tonnage quantities. And then yeah, like 13 months later, the drug was approved and on the market. And then we just keep going on and on from there. And while we were working on Truvada, we were also working on simultaneously, kind of in a black ops group, working on a tripla, which is a
Mm.
combination of Truvada plus Sestiva. So it
And
was
and
kind
for
of
the listener, I mean, I know because I have HIV, but for the listener, these are antiviral drugs used to suppress HIV, right?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that clarification. Yeah,
Yeah.
so these are the first single tablet regimen. So it's like
Yeah.
all three drugs dosed in one pill. It seems so simple, but it was revolutionary because oftentimes if you're taking two pills, and we heard, you know, from doctors, a patient would run out of one drug but still take the other one.
Mm.
And so they would develop resistance against the one they weren't taking. And
Right.
so that all of a sudden became untreatable when you got back on your regimen. So that was really fascinating how a single tablet regimen like tripla kind of changed the paradigm of survival for HIV positive. And now, like, the drugs are just so much more potent, different mechanisms,
Yeah.
and just fascinating. But yeah, it's amazing just to be, again, the right place, the right time, to be a part of that, and to work at a company really that encouraged taking huge risks. Because at the end of the day, we wanted to get these drugs on the market to help patients. And that was what we really felt like the cultural driver of this company. And to be a part of that is just fascinating. So it wasn't really the bottom line. It was like we truly were on a mission to get the drugs on the market quickly so they could help patients and know
Yeah.
that outcome.
I
So it
remember
was
at that time, this is 2010, right? And or 2009. Um, I
right,
remember when I first tested positive, you have that, I don't know, mine was like a 10-month period where, they won't let you take anything until you're dying essentially.
right.
And
Until the
and
CD4 counts drop
yeah,
to like non-detectable,
it
basically,
dropped.
right?
I guess mine dropped to 200. I think it
Wow.
was like
Yep.
250. Like you had to get down into that range. Um, and my doctor wrote the prescription for a tripla. It was I don't know what other options there were on the market at the time, but it was so new that I brought the prescription to, I'll never forget this, to the Dwayne Reed on Union Square, and I turned it into the pharmacist. It was pharmacist. It was such a big deal. Like, I can't even believe this is happening to me. And she said, "Okay, hold on. We'll call you in, when it's ready." And literally, like 5 minutes later, I was like, "Wow, that was fast." And I go over, and she said, "Your insurance declined this."
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
was like, "What are you talking about? Like I've been through this whole process for 10 months and you're telling me that I can't have this drug?" And it was because my health insurance didn't cover formulary drugs. And it was so new, they wouldn't cover it. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the only other option was to go on to AZT, which was horrifying to me because, there were all those stories about how AZT made you throw up and then you had to take it again. And so I ended up having to pay for it out of pocket for 10 months.
Oh,
I
wow.
paid $2,000 a month for that drug until I could switch my healthcare. And to this day, I have healthcare PTSD. Anytime,
Right.
it freaks me out because the thought of going back to that is so scary. So you have like a real case scenario in front of you here. Like, that changed my life.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it's inspiring to hear like those stories and to be able to sit here and talk with you because I mean it was a death sentence literally, and
I knew I was dying. I felt it. I felt my
yeah,
body running down. Like at 5 o'clock, I get home from work and I just went right to the couch because I was so exhausted. Because my immune system was on overdrive for 10 months trying to fight this off, and it was losing. And I don't know if this was normal or not, but it turned my immune system around in 2 months. My T cell count went from 200 to 750 in 2 months. And today I'm not on a tripla now, I'm on Dovato, and it's
Hmm.
now at 1450, which is
Wow.
kind of insane, right?
It is amazing how, and the drugs were so potent too.
Yeah.
Knocking down the virus and keeping them suppressed and keeping it, it's just amazing to see that, oftentimes it's easy to kind of demonize the pharmaceutical industry, but there's a lot of good has really
Yeah.
come from it.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is just one of those cases where it's just like collectively humanity came together to solve this really horrific disease that affected, primarily, gay men
Yeah.
first, and then, there's a whole rocky political period too. But at the end of the day, I think, science prevailed and really came up with really potent antivirals. And oddly enough, these compounds came from cancer therapy. A
Oh,
lot of like the approach, with these nucleotide chemistry, it came from like the kind of the initial thinking behind, DNA or disruption for cancer cells. And it turned out, these were applicable to this RNA virus. So it's really cool to see this evolution, like collectively. And again, this highlights the importance of an open and free scientific community that are free to research
yeah.
and explore and push the limits. And, oftentimes research doesn't have like an end game in mind. You just want to understand fundamental understanding of, how things work, but like commercially it may not pan out in 10 years, and that's okay. I think,
Yeah.
this is a good example of that culmination of all that research coming together. And again, just having an execution, in a commercial space then. And it's interesting too, Gilead would pride itself, like the day the drug got approved, the next day
Hmm.
it was in the pharmacy. Oftentimes there's like a 6 to 9 month lag.
Yeah.
And so it's just like they really wanted to prep for a launch and just have it available. It's too bad. I mean, I think they even had expanded access too, where you can get a triplet at cost. It's too bad that didn't reach you in
I think
terms of,
I had like a $200 gift card or something.
oh, geez.
I got $200 off, so maybe it was 1,800 off the 2,000. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it saved my life. It like and very quickly. And I think I told you this. I had never skipped a day, not
Yeah.
once. And it was honestly, um, it was that fear instilled in me by my epidemiologist at the time, that if you skip a day, and probably he's exaggerating, if you skip a day, your body could build up the disease could build resistance to the drug. And that's why I've never not taken it. Like he planted that seed in my head.
No, it's really good. I mean, compliance is a huge
Yeah.
issue. I mean,
Yeah.
with all medication, really, and it's good that he ingrained that
Yeah.
because it is right. I mean, one thing we would study is like durability. So if somebody did skip a dose, it's like you want to have enough drug around, and so there's a whole side of that groups within pharma companies study.
Yeah.
It's like a metabolism
Oh, I
and
always build up a supply. I think I have 2 weeks built up.
that's
I
smart.
can't. Yeah, like and for the move to LA in October, I need a good month. And I had a good
Yeah.
month supply of it, you know?
Especially with dealing like prioritization and
Yes,
that headache,
totally.
because it's like one day left and then I mean that really for chronic conditions those can
Yeah,
really really add anxiety and stress and potentially
totally.
especially in this case
Yeah, it's super
yeah.
stressful. So let's talk about like your approach to drug formulation. and skincare formulation, you've kind of bridged this gap that link these two sciences, if you will, that are very rarely linked. There are very few people that I know of who have this kind of duality. And so tell me how that happened, and how what the insights you've gained from your work as a pharmaceutical scientist inform your work as a formulator.
Yeah, and how I got into skincare is kind of interesting too, because after Gilead, I parted ways with Gilead and started my own company in the Bay Area, actually providing pharmaceutical like drug delivery services. So I had a lab and
Mm,
employees, and we could actually manufacture clinical supplies, and we supply global studies. It's really cool. We're a small group up in Northern California, and just north of San Francisco. I had a development lab plus clinical manufacturing. So um, it was cool. I mean, we worked with like Pfizer and Johnson and developed some amazing, like some drugs for them. And a couple have been approved now. And so it's fun to kind of go through that arc too, like independently. And so I've always had this kind of entrepreneurial bug in me.
hmm
And I think, and then I grew that company, and then a competitor acquired that company. And so with that sale in California, one of the like this is kind of the technicality behind it, is like it's an enforceable non-compete. So I couldn't work in the pharmaceutical industry, and so I was like, okay, I can't just do nothing.
right. Okay.
And so then I was thinking about flavonoids and
Mm.
skincare. And even during the process of selling the company, I lost a lot of hair. I was stressed out. I'm like, okay, I want to find a natural product that can help me with the regrowth of my hair.
Oh,
And
wow.
and 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 it was really cool. I mean, I was waiting for ingredients. I remember the experiment like clear as day, because I was trying to stabilize these emulsions that I was forming with flavonoids.
Mm.
And and it just so happened it was without an oil phase. So traditionally, an emulsion, contains an oil phase, a water phase, and an emulsifier. And so I didn't have an oil phase, but it just so happened flavonoids in this solvent system that I was using behaves kind of like an oil.
Mm.
And so they self-assemble into these small micelle structures. And once I put water in it, it formed this really clear, beautiful solution. And it was like, oh my God, this is like, so I tried it again, and then try to get the thing to precipitate, because that would show instability. And so and then so like, how did I find which flavonoids stimulated hair growth? Well, that's again thanks to the independent research.
Mm.
Flavonoids, they're so prevalent in plants. I think there's 5 or 6 thousand known flavonoids,
Wow.
and so they're potent anti-inflammatory, and have antioxidant properties. They protect plants from UV, help protect them from parasites like invading,
Antimicrobial, right? Yep.
antimicrobial,
Yeah.
antiviral. And again, what's cool about flavonoids is they're readily available. People can study them, and they make good PhD thesis or research topics, and it's kind of limitless. And but what's interesting is they're almost like the perfect class of compounds for topical delivery, because
Mm.
if you dose orally, your liver metabolizes probably like 99%. So if you take, flavonoid orally, you can't get enough concentration to even affect your skin, like
Okay.
your blood concentration, because your liver just metabolizes it.
Got it.
And then, there's not enough solubility to even, distribute it in your cells. So, and they're highly, lipophilic. They're not polar, and so again, and small molecular weight as well. So
Mm.
um, these are prime candidates
Topical
for
application.
topical application. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing is, they're not really soluble in oil too. So it's just like, oh
Wow.
crap, So And I don't like using like systems like oleic acid or even, some of the polyethylene glycols that disrupt the, stratum corneum and, create like kind of leaky portions to
To enhance
enhance absorption.
penetration, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I use an ingredient that actually is really effective at transdermal passive diffusion into
Hmm.
the dermal layer. And again, that's a highly unstable system. So if you put that in water, it's just going to all crash out. And so I have this little sample here that, I mean, this is what a flavonoid looks like in solution. It's just a
Okay.
hazy. So if you put that on your skin, it's going to turn it yellow, right?
Yeah, it's like a
And
yellowy
so,
milk is what you're holding up.
right. And oftentimes, so again, back to your point of, how do you approach this problem? If you just sort of mix ingredients together for skincare,
Mm.
oftentimes, even with say this is even a peptide,
Yeah.
like if you, I mean, if you go into a pharmaceutical group and you have a peptide group,
Mm.
they're going to be studying like protein folding, where on the chain of the protein it's actually folding, and where like the deamidation of the molecule. So, like, stability of a peptide in solution is not trivial. And so it's kind
Mm.
of interesting to see them all over the place in skincare. And the first question would be, is that stable? The second
Right.
question is, does it even absorb?
Right.
And so it's like, and so, when you see, this type of application in water, if you put this in a cream, it's just going to be the same thing. It's just going to sit on the surface.
Yeah.
And so that's why I developed XDF, which is basically the same. So these are very small, like microscopic structures now. Same concentration of that yellow. So these are basically the same thing, but you
One
know
penetrates and one doesn't.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so it's stabilized, small enough to, once it hits the surface, it breaks apart, and then you get nice passive diffusion to the dermal layers, which is important because that's where most of your immune cells are. That's where most of the redness occurs. A lot of the structural rebuilding occurs in the dermal
The
layer.
dermis
The dermis, yeah,
below the skin barrier, the epidermis, right?
correct, yeah.
Yeah. And most ingredients don't penetrate that far.
Correct, yeah. So like even like hyaluronic acid, I
Oh
mean, I
God, I
think,
talk about that all the time. Hyaluronic acid doesn't go anywhere, right? It sits on the
right,
very top layer of the skin. What the Dalton, the molecular weight is what, 25,000 to 300,000, maybe a million, something like
yeah,
that. I
absolutely.
joke. I talk a lot about how hyaluronic acid is like the biggest joke to me in skincare. Like it's just marketing spin. And I was working. That brand Rock. It's
Yeah.
in yeah Rock, right?
Hmm.
They've been around a long time. They're I believe when they were part of Johnson and Johnson, they invented retinol, where they were the first ones to mass market retinol. And I was working on a product, and that hyaluronic acid is very buzzy, and everybody wants it in skincare, and it's because marketers push it. And I was writing an article, a blog for their website, and I had this really unique access to the lead scientist in the company at the time, and I had a channel to him so that I could write, blog articles and send them to him and have him gut check them for me because I really wanted them to be legitimate. And
Hmm.
he wrote back. It was a blog article about probably a hyaluronic acid serum that they were doing. And he wrote back to me, I had inserted that I didn't know it was marketing nonsense. The whole thing about how hyaluronic acid holds 1,000 times its weight in water and draws water from the air to
Hmm.
hydrate your skin. And now I know it's complete nonsense. And he said that may be true, but the water that it's drawing to your skin is from your water reserves deeper in your skin.
Right.
And I was like, what are you talking about? I had never heard that before, and I didn't include that in the article. Um, it was only years later that I learned that that was completely true. and that by using and particularly overusing hyaluronic acid, you're just pulling all the water to the surface of your skin. Where does it go? It gets sucked out of your face on a dry winter day, right? And
Right.
you dry your skin out. So I mean, I love that you brought that up. Like, we can wonk out all you want. The whole rest of the podcast can be about ingredient penetration and, marketing lies about ingredients. But so, go ahead. Like, you brought it up.
No, I think interestingly with hyaluronic acid, probably the
Mm,
best way to rebuild your hyaluronic acid is orally,
yeah.
by
Yeah.
ingesting it. And, it's like, finding a supplement or even hyaluronic itself in a supplement form is highly orally bioavailable.
Hmm.
And so, it's great to kind of mix and match, what you ingest, and, same thing with collagen,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you cannot convince me. I will die on this hill. You cannot convince me that collagen will penetrate your skin.
No, you don't
It's
need to
just
convince
like,
anybody of that. There's another molecule that's like a gazillion, Daltons that's
right,
not going anywhere. The only way to increase the collagen in the skin is by taking it orally or stimulating collagen production with a
exactly.
retinoid or, vitamin C or a collagen peptide, and even
Or
that
or
does not
even
penetrate.
or even flavonoids too. I mean,
Or there you
they're
go. Yes.
yeah, and so that's where, I think having a combination of a good diet,
Hmm.
um, obviously exercise as well, and like I think where you get the most bang for your buck on skincare routine is really in anti-inflammatory agents. And so what makes, flavonoids are have a lot of hydroxyl groups.
Hmm.
And so those allow them to scavenge free radicals. So like UV induced inflammation.
Hmm.
Um, and so even those hydroxyl groups help with like enzymatic signaling between cells. So again, inflammation is usually an overcharged immune system. And so you basically want that part of it to calm down. And say if it's the immune system is fighting acne, you don't want it to attack, you know, good skin
Right.
cells. You
Yeah.
want it to attack, the pathogens. And so, but I think, yeah, I mean, I think peptides too. That's more of a gray area. It's more of a case by case study. Like people put palmitoyl groups, which are lipophilic groups, on
Hmm.
peptides
Hmm.
to enhance absorption. So it shows like a pretty big increase. But retinoic acid too, that's really retinol. It's like you can't use those interchangeably either because retinol has to convert to
Right.
retinoic acid.
Right.
So retinoic acid is taken orally. It can also, be applied topically, but it's highly irritating,
Yeah.
in the sun, and so that's why retinol then is, I guess dosed topically, but still that has to undergo enzymatic conversion to retinoic
Retinoic
acid. So it's
acid is more commonly known as tretinoin, right? That's the
correct, yeah,
drug that you
iso
get from, yeah.
tretinoin, yeah,
Yeah.
correct, yeah. No, so it's yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, I think the other kind of misnomer too is if it's soluble in water, it means it's going to penetrate your skin, which
Mm-mm.
so if you think
Mm-mm.
about glycerin
Yeah.
will sit on the surface.
Hmm.
Um, the only one, like the only exception to the rule really is niacinamide, which,
Right.
vitamin B3. And so
Yeah.
that's very,
Deeply
penetrates
penetrates. I think that
beautifully.
I'm
Yep.
I'm the Dalton king. I think that's 122 Daltons molecular weight.
Correct.
Um,
Yes.
but there's who knows the molecular weight of niacinamide?
I
Do
love
you
it.
remember? Do you remember what was Let's Make a Deal? Do you remember Let's Make a Deal?
Yeah.
I'll give you $100 if you know the molecular weight of niacinamide.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
awesome.
but you bring that up, and I about the solubility, and I have delved into, and maybe it's something that you can elucidate. Like, there are multiple forms of vitamin C, and skincare marketers want you to believe that ascorbic acid is the best form of vitamin C you could use, but ascorbic acid is water soluble, and it doesn't necessarily penetrate as well
No.
as like a THD ascorbate, which is oil soluble. And, can you just kind of delve into that a little bit? Like what's the difference vis-a-vis the skin?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I think you summarized it correctly. Ascorbic acid, it's a polar molecule. So when things are polar, they're just not structurally going to penetrate the skin. And so you have to like chemically modify it. And so, THD, what is it, tetrahexyl decyl ascorbate,
Hmm.
right? And so that is functionalized to be soluble in lipids. So lipids will then, theoretically should penetrate, not always. I mean, it's not a guarantee either, but
Right.
it sets you up in a better, um, better driving force to
Mm.
penetrate the skin than something that is polar and water soluble like vitamin C and ascorbic acid. And keep in mind too, ascorbic acid is highly unstable.
Right.
And so, but here's the caveat though. So going back to molecular weight,
Hmm.
so THD ascorbate is it's 1130,
Oh,
right?
okay.
That's huge, right?
That's huge. Yes.
Right,
We're
and so
talking
ascorbic,
collagen territory there.
right, and so
Yeah.
that's 70 carbon atoms, and versus ascorbic acid, which is around 180 or so, and that has what, six carbon atoms, and so if you do the math, so this is what's kind of interesting on the marketing side. People will say, well, we have about 30% vitamin C with THD ascorbate, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I've seen those claims where it's like, well, we're pushing the limits. But on a molar basis for equivalence on ascorbate, it's only 5%.
Mm.
So it has six times fewer ascorbate than ascorbic acid. So it's all kind of a math game. So it appears on the label that it's a really high percentage, but in essence, so if you have 30% again THD ascorbate,
Yeah.
you only have 5% equivalent ascorbic acid.
Got it.
Now, if it's able to be, penetrating more effectively because of the lipid delivery system, then that might be
You have a
all you
better
need.
benefit. Right.
Right.
That's so interesting. And my favorite vitamin C serum is from Paula's Choice, and it's a 25%. I think it's a blend. It's not
Okay.
ascorbic acid. It's THD, and I don't remember what else. Maybe sodium ascorbyl phosphate. I'm not sure. Um, but that's so fascinating. So you're not really getting 25% vitamin C to penetrate. Maybe you're getting 5%. But I mean, it's
Correct.
not
Yeah.
that you're not getting a benefit. Like, it's all a percentage game and a marketing game.
Right.
Vitamin C,
Exactly.
like, you get a good solid dose of vitamin C into your skin in the morning. You're going to defend your skin from environmental damage. It's that simple, right?
Right. And same thing orally. So if you ingest vitamin
Mm,
C, you know, well, here's what's really cool. Vitamin C is needed to stimulate collagen. It's
right.
basically like to catalyze, was it glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, and then lysine is needed to kind of cross-link those, collagen structures to give it more firm elasticity and firmness. And so, yeah, that's where, again, we often think we go for the topical route, but knowing that even ingesting it too is beneficial, right?
So take your morning vitamins. That still holds
So
true.
eat an orange in the morning,
Yes, drink your orange
and
juice and take
and
your
then
Flintstones vitamins. We used to put them. We had those heaters in the house when I was growing up. That there were, I don't know what it's called, but the water moved along the floorboard. The hot water moved, right? That's
okay,
how
yeah.
that's how we
Oh,
heated.
right.
Right.
Radiant heat, I guess,
I
or
guess. And my
yeah.
brother and I used to take our vitamins, and we would open up the valve and drop the vitamins in there and listen for the vitamins to go down the wall. We got such a thrill about that. Like, they disappeared. Yep, took our vitamins.
and then your
Now
parents
I'm
had to replace the
Yeah,
whole.
now I'm the supplement king. Like, I have like 12 supplements I take in the morning, and then another 8, 9, 10 supplements I take at night with my HIV pill. It's just like,
Right.
it's insane. But anyway, I mean, we do need to talk about, and I want to talk about this, your
Right.
brand.
Yes. Oh,
Mark
cool.
Los Angeles. So like, so looking at what you've done with Mark Los Angeles, like to me, it's not just like plant-based skincare. There's tons of plant-based skincare out there. And
Right.
but it's like precision engineered plant-based skincare. Like you've taken your pharmaceutical background and brought that to the products. And like so to me, like I guess the question is how do you balance the ideals of clean beauty with clinical grade science? Not everybody does that well, and not everybody, strikes the balance.
Right. And so, I attack this from multiple angles. It's like really, the first is like the ingredient story, and we're pretty much focused on flavonoids
Yeah.
and really, elucidating their benefits as potent anti-inflammatory, um, antioxidant, and so how do we just mix it up and put it in a bottle and then, kind of cross our fingers and hope things, work?
Yeah, hope people
And,
catch on and think it's interesting and unique.
right. But we've done a lot of research, so we've done a lot of work with, keratinocytes, skin cells, especially around inflammation, so
Hmm.
stress cells, and then putting, these XDF. So what you just held up was our moisturizer, and the EQ collection has EGCG from green tea, and then quercetin from basically, I mean, it's abundant in most plants like berries and onions and garlic.
Right.
And so, we stress those cells, and we measured like TNF alpha, even reactive oxygenated species, and you see a big spike when these are stressed, but then you put the flavonoids, in the presence of flavonoids, they bring it back to base level, and it's again showing that translational pharmaceutics. Basically, that these work, but how do we prove it? Well, we prove it on a cellular level, and then we take it the next step further and conduct a clinical trial. And so those products were actually tested with acne patients. So we
Hmm.
know that they're, antibacterial. We can't really say that because then that gets into a drug claim. But,
Right, right. Because
we
acne is so
know,
regulated. Yeah.
right. But we know that, these worked effectively in acne patients
Hmm.
and reducing their redness and symptoms within, like almost immediately. And then, we followed these patients out to 8 weeks, and they were, like 80+% reported, clearing of their symptoms associated with acne. So it's really understanding like biologically, what we're going for, and then designing both the experimental conditions to prove the mechanistic function,
Yeah.
not sort of just like winging a prayer, going in the clinic and, like 99% reported this moisturizer felt hydrating. It's like, well,
Uh,
yeah, I mean, it's like that's going to happen. It's like claiming that this glass of water is going to quench my thirst. And, 100% of the people, maybe 99% will report that,
Agree. I mean, I always say, like, you can always find, 30 women in New Jersey who can apply Jello to their face and tell you that it's hydrating. Like,
Right.
that's it's just silly. But before we move on, you mentioned reactive oxygen species,
Yeah.
and reactive oxygen species is a result of inflammation, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And in particular, my point is that it's a result of UV induced inflammation. And so, if these products are able to bring down inflammation, would you say, and this is probably something that you can't say, but I'm saying it, would you look at these products as having an effect on photoaging if they're bringing down UV induced inflammation?
Oh, definitely. I think, that's one thing we're going to lean into on this summer
Hmm.
is really, part of your skincare routine, not only application of SPF, but after you've gone on holiday, or even every day you come back at night, is what is your post UV exposure routine? And
Yeah.
I think applying flavonoids should be a component of that, and really slowing down UV aging. Absolutely.
the
And
the
we've done
damage
some,
that you've inflicted during the day. Even if you've
Totally.
applied sunscreen and you've used, I use niacinamide and of course, and
Right.
vitamin C every morning in conjunction with sunscreen, but it doesn't mean that I don't have UV induced inflammation throughout the day. I'm not.
Correct.
I'll be the first to admit I don't reapply sunscreen. I'm terrible at that. Sometimes I do around my eyes, but of course, it's not been very sunny in New York, but the UV still gets through. And
Right.
so I'm like really starting to think about what can I be doing at night? And a lot of brands are not a lot of brands, but there are brands starting to appear on the market that are focused on DNA repair enzymes and countering that, photo damage that's occurring during the day. So
Right.
I think you're certainly onto something. It doesn't have to just be about summer, but obviously
Right.
the damage is more prevalent in the summer.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's, what, if you look at even their functions in plants
Mm.
is just that. It's
Yeah,
UV protection
yeah,
and kind of, keeping them kind of disease free,
hmm
uh, due to weakening, systems from UV exposure. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point to bring up. And, our serum, of course, I have to plug the products.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
plug it.
the
This
serum,
is the
sorry,
serum.
the serum is the highest concentration. It's really that was first designed to be just a spot treatment,
Hmm
but then people started using it all over and just kind of loving the even tone. And again, that's kind of an indicator that these are working like the way they're intended. Even people with psoriasis, eczema have used this, and it's really helped them, calm that inflammation.
Yeah.
And again, just using the power of flavonoids, and we just launched products a couple months ago too, the lip health
The two,
products,
yeah.
and yeah,
I
really,
mentioned that in the opening, and I thought it was so fascinating. You've looked at the skincare marketplace. Not a lot of brands launch, you know, with 5 products, and the first 2 of the 5 products are for lip.
right.
So
And
this
so
one is
yeah,
the lip rescue. This is a serum.
correct, yeah. So that's designed as soon as you feel the first tingle of a cold sore,
Hmm
you apply that. It's like one drop is enough to apply to your entire lips. And again, we've conducted a study with 25 people that experience like monthly cold sores,
hmm
and I'd say about 20 to 30% did not even experience a cold sore. And now we're about 6 months from the study, and some of those people still write us and say, "I haven't received a you know developed a cold sore yet." And so the balm is meant to sort of complement and help with, sort of the cracking and blistering that occurs with cold sores, but it has the same level of flavonoids. So I wanted to, again, if you're thinking like HIV, you want to knock down the virus. I didn't want to like leave an opening with the balm not having flavonoids. So if people are just using the balm every day, and then they get a cold sore, you just want to make sure that, they have that coverage with the flavonoids in the balm as well. So we're seeing like half the healing time as compared to even an acyclovir and Abreva.
hmm
And everybody that was in the study didn't even see it go to the blistering phase. So it's
Oh
like the
wow.
worst phase, and it's like a painful phase, embarrassing phase. So it actually, say like their typical period of time was 7 to 14 days for healing. It knocked it down to about 3 to 5 days. It was a typical healing time if they developed the cold sore. And, so it was less painful, less severe. And, so we're excited about rolling that out. Now, the challenging part is like in the beauty space, they don't know what to do with this product.
Right, of course. Because the beauty space is like 80%, I'm making it up, 80% marketing, 20% like legitimate science. Like and there are brands that are 100% marketing and no
Right.
science. Like, yeah, I mean, and I talk to I talk to a lot of dermatologists, who kind of delve into this. They're in this world and they're fascinated by it. And to me, it's so interesting because I come from the beauty world, and
Yeah,
derms and doctors, like scientists like yourself, don't come from the beauty world, and it's like a completely different animal. Like, and
right.
you're speaking a different language. You're speaking a different language in this podcast. Like, and I'm thinking this is so cool. Like, people who are beauty junkies are like, what? This isn't what they're used to hearing. And I think it's so interesting. Like, you came out with these lip products, and you tackled cold sores, because you could. And flavonoids have this incredible healing effect, or suppression effect, like the drugs that you developed did. And so
Right.
you're like, that's what I love about what you're doing, is you're bringing this know-how and this expertise to beauty, which doesn't exist.
It is an interesting space to be in because, like you said, there's so many like amazing facets to it, right?
Yeah.
There's the marketing, which is amazing. It's almost like developing a fashion brand, right? In a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But then, there are dermatologists.
Hmm.
Even, I've been talking to dentists as well. They treat cold sores.
Yeah.
There's like everything that's like supporting like basically beauty in the face. Dermatologists, pharmacists as well. That's, I think, where, there's kind of that support. It's Pharmacy is really amazing too, because, you have these boutique pharmacies in New York. It's kind of I think, a very unique New York occurrence. Like, you have Madison Apothecary,
Yeah.
Theo
Yeah.
Bigelow,
I mean,
Zittimer.
Kiehl's started as a pharmacy.
He also, yeah, that's right.
Obviously not
That's
that
right. That's
now,
right.
but Kiehl's was a pharmacy where you went in with your prescription and had it filled.
And so, like, but there's that crossover now, especially in New York, where
Yeah.
a lot of beauty resides too.
Yeah.
So, and then you have estheticians and even dermatologists performing some of the esthetician, facials as well. So it's this really cool crossover that can be kind of almost lawless in some degree, but then
Right.
it
It is
is
totally unregulated, right?
right.
I mean, yeah.
But then there's that highly regulated side, like dermatologists, and like talking to them, it's a high bar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the brands that they bring in, like SkinCeuticals, Alta MD,
Hmm.
IS Clinical, those
Elastin.
are,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so those, and again, you can argue whether or not those are beauty brands or those are dermatologist backed. So it's kind of an interesting, like, quote unquote certification process,
Yeah.
how to get into these different channels. And you asked too, like in the beginning, like clinical, well, like clinical beauty, and then the
Hmm.
sort of the clean aspect too.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to touch on was like the ingredients. I actually reach out to a lot of ingredient suppliers. There's again crossover in the farm industry. A lot of
Hmm.
these suppliers, like Croda, BASF, they supply to the farm industry, especially in the preclinical side of things. When we're doing a lot of studies, like on preclinical compounds, these are compounds that are just being screened for their activity. You try to get them in solution as best you can, and oftentimes it's with these wild emulsion systems. But the standards in pharma, there's usually a pharma grade and there's usually a dermatology grade, and we would never even touch that because there's
Right.
impurities. Like if you're doing a dog study to evaluate like an HIV drug and there's an impurity that can give the dog a heart attack, that's going to be assigned to your drug. Like the heart attack, even though that impurity is well known in the ingredient, if it's present, it can screw up your whole clinical study and derail a program. So we basically the cut. Long story short is basically we source the most pure ingredients we can get our hands on,
Hmm.
and then we use EWG currently
Yeah.
as kind of our vetting. process, and I like their process. They go through the known impurities of a given ingredient, something
Yeah.
as benign as like even some of the surfactants and emulsifiers have well-known sensitizing impurities, and so they want to know that you're just not getting it from a run-of-the-mill place. You're getting it from a reputable supplier. I think that's really the key: is reputable suppliers. A lot of their manufacturing processes have even been retooled to have like bio-based source of ingredients now, and sort of weaning off petroleum based products. So
Right. God,
it's kind
yes.
of, so there's a lot of I think, quite frankly, a lot of innovation going on in the ingredient space that I don't think they're getting enough credit, because they're implementing a lot of purification steps that
Hmm.
reduce impurities to non-detectable limits, and so I that's our approach to it. It's basically get the functionality we need, but keep the formulation as pure as we can.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that, and I was actually going to ask you. I mean, you're in this new world, right? This new skincare beauty world, and I was going to ask you where you go, as a pharmaceutical scientist, like where you go for legitimate, trusted source of information, and are you still seeking out you know information from pharmaceuticals, or are you finding that kind of stuff in another place? And EWG is the perfect example. A lot of brands look to EWG as like the source, and relying on the information that they provide. So are there other places where you're like, are you getting white papers, whatever, from ingredient manufacturers? Like, where else are you getting your information from for innovation?
I have to be honest with you. I mean, I usually go to the European regulatory
Oh, wow.
dossier because
Mhm.
they provide a nice like summary of like just a given ingredient. They'll give you, and it's thanks to, again, my experience with the tox groups. So
Yeah.
toxicology group in a pharma company will kind of hold you accountable to dosing levels of certain ingredients, and they will, like, I want to use 10% of this ingredient, and they'll fire back, no, you can only use 5% because, again, you'll harm the animals. And like, okay, that's great. And so once you start going through that routine, you understand probably the best source is really the Europeans, because they'll do a full monograph on ingredients where if you look at a monograph in the US, it could be very sparse in
Mhm.
general.
Mhm.
And so they really, we're like, again, what are the known impurities? What are these impurities like? Are there sensitizing agents? Do they cause
Right.
rashes?
Right.
And so, and then knowing what the limits are, and staying current too, because sometimes an ingredient can be limited at 5%, but then they'll have like an updated monograph that says now it's like 2%.
Right.
And so it's just knowing that, you need to future proof your formulas too, if you want to make sure that, they're EWG verified or
Yeah.
whatever other method you're using to verify. But and then also, I mentioned reputable suppliers. So it's cool. A lot of the salespeople I use are still the pharma salespeople. And they're
Oh,
like, well, we're going to
wow.
pass you off on the cosmetic. I'm like, well, doesn't matter. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
because I've known them for like 20 plus years, and it's kind of cool to have that. And even just, yeah. So I think, there's Special Chem too is an online source, and they're based out of France, I think. So
There
again,
you
it,
go
it
again.
goes
Yep.
back to and there's always that list. What is it? I don't even know what the numbers are. Europe has 10,000 banned chemicals
Oh, right.
in
Yeah.
the US or whatever. It's like, I don't even know what that means. I mean, at the end of the
Mm.
day, the US, their FDA is to protect, their mission is to protect the public safety. Um, I don't know what it is today, but, but we don't have to go there.
We
Um,
we don't have
but
to go there. Are we
But
being rejected?
but but no, I think it is. I think it's a very reliable, consistent source. Is the European monographs, in my opinion, and well, it's cool too. Like EWG, they have, I think it's 1,000-page dossier on all the ingredients that they
Mm,
flagged, and it's an ongoing process for them to,
yeah.
yeah. So
Cool.
yeah.
I mean, I love that you brought that up. So listen, one more question, and then I want to do just a quick round of hot takes. So fast forward 5 years, like what impact would you want Mark Los Angeles to have on the skincare world and the approach to skincare? Is it penetration? Is it beyond that? Is it plant science? What's your thought?
I mean, I think really it's interesting with flavonoids because some
Mm,
people view them as just kind of a buzzy, trendy, like ingredient class. And I have to forcefully disagree with that because I think the reason why it's been buzzy and trendy is they're hard to formulate. The
hmm
people that have formulated with them, not surprisingly, you probably don't see the benefits that you want.
Yeah.
Like even resveratrol is used, right, heavily in a lot of formulations. But
Yeah.
again, to wonk out on chemistry, there's, we talk about stereochemistry. It's a conformational, the way the molecule shows up in nature. Like, so there's, and so, yeah, if you think back to like your basic chemistry, like they would show a mirror and a molecule, like the right-handed and left-handed version of molecule. The right-handed version might be potent, the left-handed version is not.
hmm
And so that's what happens with resveratrol. It's the trans isomer is the potent version. You put that in water, it'll convert to the cis isomer, and it's not biologically active.
Ah,
So it's that simple. And so I think there's a lot more potential with flavonoids and anti-inflammation. We do have a lot of products sitting on the shelf, so I'd love to have those, show the light of the day, especially around hair growth and even, varicose veins and
mm,
puffy eyes and, collagen restructuring. It's amazing what these molecules can do under the right conditions and more importantly, once they're delivered properly and stabilized too. Um, yeah, and then I really want, I mean, focusing on the lip products, I really want those to be kind of the standard of care. And how we do that on a regulatory basis, again, I was even thinking registering those in Europe and finding a way to regulatory approval. I don't know. And so, yeah, I mean, 5 years from now, I'd love for that to be kind of the gold standard for cold sore treatment.
cool. Wow. I mean, I wasn't expecting that. That's awesome. All right, so let's do some like, hot takes. I'm just going to throw some questions at you, one word answers, more if you need them. Most misunderstood molecule.
Um, wow, you stumped me. I would say, well, the easy one is like flavonoids.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah. What makes skin truly healthy?
I would say I mean, I would start from a healthy diet.
Oh, wow.
A
Okay.
diet rich in like omega 3s,
Mhm.
like a lot of like salmon or avocado.
Mhm.
And then I think having a really good anti-inflammatory skincare regimen.
Love it. That one desert island product.
I would say our rescue serum.
Okay. Okay.
I've fallen in love with that. I mean, again, it used to be a spa treatment from cycling. I'd break out,
Yeah.
and
From
I've like
bicycling.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. When we talked last time,
Yeah.
we share a common interest in
Long
cycling.
distance cycling. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that I'm moving to Los Angeles in the fall. At least that's the goal.
nice,
So yeah, I mean, I
very
can't
nice.
give up my long distance cycling. Like I cannot wait to ride along the water in the morning. That's going to be incredible.
Cool.
Chemical or physical sunscreen?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I would say physical zinc oxide.
Your preference, but you'll put on chemical if that's all you've
I'll
got.
put on chemical
Yeah,
too. I mean, again,
same.
I mean, within reason, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
think there are the known baddies,
of course.
but I do like the European chemical sunscreens are good too.
Really
Yeah,
elegant.
yeah.
One word to describe Mark Los Angeles.
Delivery.
Excellent. I love it. And that really does sum it up, doesn't it? All right, Mark, let's end on that. That's terrific. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm going to drop links to all of the products into the show notes so that our listeners can pop over to your website and take a look at the products. And God, if they have a cold sore that appears every month, they know where to go now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Carmine.
Thank
Really enjoyed this conversation. And
Yeah, me
again,
too.
thanks for your support.
Oh, for sure. All right, Mark. Thank you.
All right.
Ciao.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
That was awesome. How cool, right? I totally seized on the opportunity to wonk out. Like, went nuts. I'm sorry if I dragged you guys along. I hope you found it interesting. All right. Thank you for listening to the Skincarma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skincarma blog at skincarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.